The Front Row Back Row podcast is a show where two grad school buddies discuss physical therapy entrepreneurship. I helped guide a company to an 8-figure exit, and I'm now starting my own mobile company. Brian grew his mobile practice to 4 clinics, and he's now doing $1 million in revenue. Join us as we help you grow your own business. Hello and welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast. My name is Dr. Owen Campbell. I am the owner of Simplify Motion Physical Therapy in Phoenix, Arizona. And with me, as always, is Dr. Brian Wolf, the owner of Evolution PT and Fitness in Connecticut and Long Island. How are we doing today, Brian?
Nice, man. You got a retake. For full transparency, we had to redo this because we messed up, and that was an excellent intro 2 for 2 for Owen. Fantastic. I'm good, man. I'm good.
I should have been in radio. What are you going to say?
That practice was what you needed.
Well, we've done it now. This is the 27th episode, I think.
That's
so
right.
We're actually I'm getting in a little flow here as the pseudo host.
I know, it's good. It's good. I really like it.
Yeah. So today we are going to be talking a lot about partnering, and a big thing that we like to hit on is referral partners. And one of the biggest things for a mobile PT is trying to find either a gym or, in my case, like a country club for golfers, or if I know certain pelvic floor physical therapists will work with OBGYNs, just looking for someone to kind of find a brick and mortar space that you can offer to your clients. So the most common one by far is gyms. So, and honestly, the nice part is for a lot of our listeners that don't know this, is that Brian started his mobile business 8 or 9 years ago, and he transitioned to working with a gym. Now he owns 5 PT and fitness centers, right? So for anybody to speak to how to make a gym relationship work, I kind of want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, man. I think so. Basically, my quick story is how I started and how we got into the gym was basically I started off just like going as a mobile PT practice, table in the back of the car, going to people's homes, and what I did was I basically teamed up with like a running store who said, hey, I'll come and I'll talk and talk to people and just kind of do stuff with foot evaluations, whatever. I was doing a community event with a running store. And I remember this one woman came in and she was like, oh, awesome. Like, where's your location? And I was like, well, I don't have a location. I'll just come to your house. And she was like, well, all right, weirdo. Like, you're not coming to my house. And so I realized that really quickly. I was like, I should get like a neutral location, just somewhere where I could take people intermittently and go. And so that's what I did. I partnered with a gym and kicked tires on a couple different places. It happened to be a CrossFit gym. At the time, I didn't do CrossFit at all. And I was still trying to figure out like what I want to do. I had actually visited a couple of our friends from college who were big CrossFitters, and I was doing a dry needling course with one of them. And so, that was like something like, oh, everybody in CrossFit loves dry needling. And so it just sort of got into this conversation. And that's how I started. And then I got actually very much into CrossFit because I was there. So they liked it because I became a member. So it became it started off, it actually turned into a terrible relationship, which is what we'll talk about from a pitfall perspective, so I can give that insight. But at the beginning, it was an amazing relationship where it was awesome. I was getting referrals, I was getting people, I was working out, I was getting in great shape. Like it was really awesome from that perspective. So yeah, we can talk through all the process of like what that looked like. That was in 2017. It's 2024 now, and now we went from being a mobile practice to having multi locations and actually running gym facilities as well, which is great.
Yeah, and that's what I think is the most interesting for me is kind of picking your spot. When do you do it, right? And obviously you have to have a gym owner that's willing. And I've actually been shocked at how many have approached me, mostly because they just want to lease out the back like closet that they used to have to store like those like jazzercise steps or whatever. And they're like, yeah, you can just throw a table back there. It's a PT clinic. And, all the way down to, I've had gym owners that's just been like, yeah, you and 15 other PTs, man, we already got 3 of them. So I think the most interesting thing to think about is, when is it a good idea? What are some of the things that you want to look at in that agreement? Because it's got to make sense for the business owner, right? You don't want to just be there, pay all this money and then get nobody. But at the same time, that could be a pretty lucrative relationship like you just shared.
Yeah. I think that the thing you want to realize right, when you are negotiating these leases, negotiating what you're doing, is recognizing what you're giving up versus what you're paying. Um, obviously every town is different. I'm in a very expensive area in Fairfield County, so to sublet some space is not cheap, right? Or at least
Mhm.
what some would say is. I think that the other pitfall is when you're taking percentages off of what you actually charge. One thing that I did incorrectly that I realized when I was getting there is I was charging the exact same amount to come into someone's home as someone would have to
Mhm.
come to the gym. And we didn't have like a private treatment room. Like it wasn't like a super conducive situation. So when someone's like, well, why would I come to the gym when like I can just come see you you can see me at my house and I pay the same amount of money. So
Mhm.
you will also turn that group away in theory.
Yeah.
So like you want to create so it's really a smart idea is to basically upsell coming to someone's home. So by
Yeah.
doing that, being like, hey, if I come to your home, it's X, and then so I think when you're thinking about your cash rates, or honestly, I even tried the insurance rates at people's homes. And the problem was my insurance rates were the exact same at their house as it was for coming to me. And so I think
Mhm.
one of the things you want to differentiate is it should be a lower price or a lower barrier to entry for them to come to you versus if you go to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So like for one thing I do now is if I'm going to someone's home, like here at Evolution, like we charge cash for that. We don't do that through insurance.
Yeah.
So most people, because the barrier to entry is so low, if you come to see me for insurance, people will come in this way and come
Yeah.
inside. So I think that makes a lot more sense. But at the same time, like if you're a cash based practice, you want to be charging at least $40 more for going to someone's home because
Yeah.
it's just, and if you're like, well, the person lives close to this, to that, realize like price discrimination is real. So like if you're going to charge $150 for a session to go to someone's house and then 110 sessions for someone to come to you, um, but then all of a sudden someone's really far away and you're like, well, like I'll charge you 170. Like you actually aren't allowed to do that. So you
Yeah.
got to realize like what, you can have travel fees and travel costs, but people don't like that stuff either. So really what you want to do is establish a flat rate for when you go to people's homes, how much that is, and then something in
Mhm.
the gym. And then you want to be prepared for them to, the gym, obviously. I think if you can get as quickly as possible to a flat rate within the facility, then what happens is your profit margin goes up because if you think
Mhm.
about it, so
So
industry.
just to
Yeah, go ahead.
clarify here. So when you say, so you're saying obviously you charge a little bit more of a premium going to someone's home, and that makes sense obviously for the convenience, but also for the fact that you have travel time built into that price and all that. But then now what we're talking a little bit about, and we can get into like how to sell to the gym owner, why you're a good reason for them to come in. I'm talking about how people want me to come in as like a tenant, right? But some gym owners, you have to sell why they should send to you. But what you're talking about now is a lease versus a revenue share agreement, correct? So, like you said, you wanted to
Yeah,
get to a lease as quick as possible, right?
yeah,
So, you want to be paying a monthly fee for that space, regardless of how many people you see, as opposed to, and I'll share with the listeners, this is what I'm doing now is I have a revenue share agreement because the gym that I am with doesn't have that much volume, right? So
yeah.
it wouldn't make sense for me to have a lease right now with them. But if they grow, I grow, we all grow, then you're saying you want to try and get to that lease as quick as possible?
Yeah, and here's why I would say that, right? And you and I've talked about this is that the gym and it's now let's use the gym as a example, but this what I'm going to explain and how I'm going to break this down is essentially the exact same way for how you could do this for a yoga studio. Almost, if you're working at if a chiropractor says, "Hey, I have an extra room," that kind of thing, you could do it with any of these services, right? So essentially, and I'm going to use the gym just because it's just the word that I know because I'm in gyms. So the way I
Yeah.
would describe it is, and so is Owen, so to make it easier. So if I go to a gym, one of the first things I'm approaching, particularly if you're like, hey, I got a specific gym that I want to partner with, realize that it's funny, dude. I was just talking about this with a guy. He actually has a men's grooming company here in town, and we were just chatting about how we should do something together. And like, he's a super cool guy, and like, I love the idea. Like, it's a men's like hair cutting place. It's like it's just a really cool opportunity. And he goes, so many people come to me and be like, hey, let me sell my products in your store. And he's like, that doesn't help me. I'm trying to upsell people on my stuff. Like, I don't want you to upset. I don't need your stuff in my store so I can upsell it for you. Right.
Hmm.
So realize that that's what the gym owner is doing and thinking in their head when you go there. So I think there's a couple different things for gyms that you can do, right? One, hey, I'm going to come in and do a service that you don't have. So this is really that works really well. That angle works really. Basically, what you're trying to do is you're selling yourself to the gym. You're saying,
Mhm.
hey, like as a physical therapist, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to help with, I'm going to add a service that you don't provide. Like we could do mobility stuff and stability stuff, posture. We could do, injury prevention stuff for any of the gym. Particular that works really well in CrossFit. For golf for you, hey, we can work on performance stuff so we can help guys, swing better, stay healthier. Those are all things you do. It's a value add. What can I do for you? Right? Here's how I can help you. Uh,
Mhm.
in a gym, a big one that I think for physical therapy, because originally, I wouldn't say, hey, we're going to send you a lot of members to the gym because
Mhm.
therapy traditionally isn't a great referral system into gyms. It just isn't. Think about
Mhm.
your clinics before you're now. Like how many people say, hey, you got to go try this gym, and particularly if the therapists, you got to try that CrossFit gym, right? Like that's just not that's just not a normal pitch for us, and it's not.
Yeah.
We see so many diverse types of populations. So, what I think actually we do a great job of is helping gyms retain members. Hey, where's
Mhm.
the value add that you don't have to charge for, that we'll charge for, but we're a value add, and we'll provide you some free value with like mobility classes and like stability stuff, and we'll just do all sorts of free stuff for the gym and like help out with
Mhm.
retention. That's awesome, and that does happen.
Yeah.
So there's a value add you can provide by giving free stuff to the gym, and then along with that is like you're saying, hey, I'm also going to pay you for me to be here, right? So
Yeah.
like I'm going to charge them. I'm going to upsell the charge the members, but I'm going to pay you. And so
Mhm.
one of the things about a rev share is a rev share allows you to start low and build. So
Mhm.
let's make it super easy, just for numbers' sake. I charge $100, and I'm going to give you the owner 30%. Right?
Mhm.
It can be anywhere. I would tell you try and negotiate that down. I would try and get that to 20% as best as possible.
Yeah. 80/20 is where I'm at.
Yeah, and that's a good spot to be in, right?
Yeah.
But realize that like the profit margin you're handing away is you're handing 20% of your business every single
Mhm.
time. So if I have 10 patients at $100, and again 10 patient visits at
Mhm.
$100, that's $1,000. That means he's making 200.
Mhm.
So his investment, I'm saying his, but it could be his or hers. So if
Yeah.
anybody gets offended by that, okay. But like in terms of his or hers, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to take them to 200, and they're going to say, hey, for you to be here for the ten times, I'm going to take that money. But they're thinking, okay, long term, I'll just keep making 20% of whatever they make,
Mhm.
right? So there's two reasons, in my opinion, for why you want to get to a lease level, and it's for both the gym owner and for you. It doesn't create the greatest relationship if, for instance, you take a member out of the gym and I
Mhm.
go to their home and charge them, and then they got cut out of the deal. Number one,
Yeah.
right? So there's always the guy got cut out of the deal. I've had that happen in one of my other locations. The owner got pissed because I took him to one of my other locations, and it was just convenient for that person.
Yeah.
I had took another location and brought it to him. So like I try to explain like, hey, it was like, think about it, like it just was more convenient for that person and vice versa. Like you're getting paid on either one. He didn't
Yeah.
see it that way, right? He was like, listen, like my members stay here, so I get paid by you from that perspective. So you create
Yeah.
that kind of relationship, number one. So you just
Mhm.
got to be careful. And that can turn into a bad relationship. Two is when you think about as you grow, you're going to be paying. If you think about what the space would be, like if I were just to
Yeah.
rent this space, it might be $1,000, right? Or 1,200
Yeah.
bucks or $2,000, whatever the space is. If I was just going to rent a room, right?
Mhm.
So inevitably, there's a certain threshold that you're going to hit where all of a sudden you're like, well, wait a minute, there should be a cap on this because like that
Mhm.
room's not worth 1,500, 2,000. You know what I mean? Like that back room with the closet, like we're like, well, what would you charge somebody right at the gate for that? Right. And
What,
if
the
they're like,
back? Yeah.
yeah, like again, I'm just making this theoretical. Say they're like, hey, it's $1,000, right? For that
Yeah,
back
that's
room.
that's what I've seen. It literally, the guy showed me his old storage closet, and he's like, "Oh,
Yeah,
great potential. All they have to do is walk right by the bathrooms to get to you." And it's just like, dude. And he's like, "Oh, it's only 1,500 a month, right?"
yeah, it's
And
great.
I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, we're in like a really nice gym," and I'm like, "Okay, like
And so, and
you gave me the sanitation closet, but
yeah, exactly, exactly,
okay."
right? So like for like this is the type of relationship that you're looking for. I think
Yeah,
in this scenario, when you have this happen, you're
yeah,
realizing that you're going to have to exit that gym at some point, right? Because
yeah,
you're going to outgrow the gym.
yeah.
So depending on, and again, like one big red flag to throw out to everybody when they're listening to this, if a gym is being like, come on, come on, come on, come into the gym's probably not doing well. They're probably
Yeah.
struggling, right? Because
Yeah.
what they're looking for is subletters, right? So
Yeah.
they're looking for people to pay the bills. And so
Yeah.
in essence, if you're like, hey, like, we'll pay you X amount, and that's what happened in one of my relationships is like, I mean, and COVID happened, which just smashed gyms. But
Yeah.
in terms of that, like they went under, and now all of a sudden I was scrambling to figure out where I want to take my people,
Yeah.
right? And that created a terrible situation. So it does happen. I think reason you want to have that cap in general is because you just don't want to be losing, getting taken advantage of. I think,
Yeah.
and a very important thing to realize, depending on your area, is maybe you aren't at a level now where you can afford $1,500, $2,000, but I can promise you, for 2 grand, you can find, even in this area, you can find really good spaces to lease.
Hmm.
You're gonna have to build it out, which is what you got to figure out, right? Like, all right, like if I'm in this gym and it's $1,500, but I get to use this area, like, I mean, if that store, and what you can start with, and you can always start with, hey, I'm going to start with this like arrangement of 20 to 30% that I'll pay you.
Yeah.
But if we get to a point where I'm paying you $1,000 and no one's rented that storage closet, what do you say we cap it at 2,000 and I'll write a formal agreement and I'll commit,
Yeah.
right?
And that's the stuff with all this is that you have to have your long-term business plan in mind, right? So if you want to be a you want to own 2 or 3 clinics down the road, and you don't want anything to do with the gym owner because you're going to be the gym, kind of like what you did, then you need to kind of structure these deals in the beginning to always give you different out clauses, even though it may cost a little bit more at the beginning. But then as you're doing it, you also, I mean, you have to be really sensitive to cash flow at the beginning, right? Like that's where the revenue share agreement comes in, where no one's making money unless you're making money and you're making most of it. And then you get to a point where a lease makes more sense because your volume is so high that the revenue share agreement's knocking you out. And then when you're in that conversation about a lease, you want to also have in mind, okay, maybe in about a year or two, I might not need you, right? I may be able to afford that equipment myself and go down the street in the strip mall and open up my own clinic, right? And charge my own members and have my own sort of fitness class slash PT gym, PT clinic thing going. So the having in your head what you want to do is important, because if you want to do the opposite, where all you want to do is be a mobile therapist and have what you said, that first option for that runner, then hey, revenue share at like 4 different gyms, right? That way, in 4 different areas of your territory, you can have something close that's a good option for whatever patient. And maybe you don't do too much social media so you don't conflict each way, but you have something where no one's going to say, who are you and why are you showing up with a table? So these are different kind of ways that you have to think strategically, not just be like, oh, they got the super cool like weights that look great on Instagram when I throw them up and stuff. So like I want to go with them, right? Because those tend to be the gyms that know that they can either try and mess with you with rates, or they're spending way too much time on their Instagram and not about how to retain their customers.
Yeah, I think, dude, if I were to say I lost everything and I had to start all over again, had no money to
Mhm.
start, right? I think the way that I would start, honestly, is kind of like what we talked about you. Is I would start with getting some. I would really upsell getting like at a home visits, like paying more
Mhm.
money for value that I'm going to provide at their homes.
Mhm.
Um, and I would charge somewhere in the neighborhood of like $200 for an
Mhm.
hour to go. And then I would find a gym that I would partner with for like, and I would probably charge for like a 45-minute session. I'd probably do like a 45-minute session for $120, 125
Mhm.
bucks, $115, something like that. Um,
And use that as your kind of escape valve in the sales conversation,
yes.
where they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I don't know, like it's just 200 is fine, but
Yeah.
maybe it's not, I don't know." Or if
Yeah.
they're like, "I don't want you in my home," be like,
Yeah.
"Cool, second option, here you go."
Exactly.
So you don't lose it.
And the way that math can work out, right? So if I were to have to drive, because you know this, and this is how I would price it out in theory. So I'd be looking to make $200 an hour still. So say I
Mhm.
did 115 for 40 minutes. I know I can do 3 people. I can do 3 people in 2 hours. So that's how you can give yourself a raise, by shortening your time, right? So you
Mhm.
don't just necessarily have to raise your prices. You can also shorten the time in the clinic. So you
Yeah.
can say, all right, so what's 150? So $400
Well,
for 2 hours.
And think about how much a mobile visit is you showing up, you getting in the house, you undoing
Yes.
your table,
Yep.
all that other stuff. You can get a lot done in 45 minutes.
Exactly. So I would say, okay, so the $400 I can make in 2 hours, which in really you can't, right? So I you could charge $133 and do three people in 2 hours and make the same amount of money.
Mhm.
So that's how I would play around with it. So maybe I'm charging a buck 30 for you to come
Yeah.
see me in the clinic, but I'll come to you for 200. And then
Yes.
that's where, that's where you can that's a different way to do it that I think is really good. And so I think you can play around with some of those things. I'm also playing around with some subscription based stuff
Mhm.
where like come to 2 times a week. It's 2 times a week, come to the clinic, and it's 199, right? Subscription based. You miss,
Yeah.
sorry, you
Yeah.
missed. That's your thing, right? There's another one that I'm playing around with that one of the other guys that Greg Todd has talked about
Mhm.
is a solution based fee. And I haven't done any research on. I just actually
Yeah,
just
the POC pricing.
yeah, I think that's really
Yeah.
smart. So basically saying like, hey, I'll get this back problem better, pay me 2 grand or whatever. And
Mhm.
do that. So that's a really interesting model
Oh,
too. I've never done it. I've
that's
never
a
done
whole
it.
other that's a whole other podcast, my friend.
I know. I've never done it, but it's super intriguing. And I think so. I don't want to speak to something I haven't done, but a
Yeah.
very smart idea. Why?
Yeah.
Because in essence, what you're doing is you're placing the value on the problem,
Yeah.
right? Like I will fix your problem, and
Well,
that's
it's
it.
like a it's
Yeah,
it's like a contractor in a house. You got a leaky roof. I'll fix your problem. It'll cost this much. And if they're
exactly.
like, "Oh crap, it actually I misestimated it." Well, okay, then they're out money.
Yeah,
But if they didn't and all of a sudden it's like, "Actually, it didn't really cost that much to fix this." Well, you're like, "Okay, well that was what the estimate is. You fixed my problem." Right?
exactly.
So, it can come out in the wash.
It can.
But
I think the biggest thing with it's very similar to the weight loss problem, right? Like I can
yeah.
help you lose 10 pounds and 3% body fat in 6 weeks for
Yeah.
X,
Yeah.
right? So the difference is like the consistency side of it, but nevertheless, I
Right.
think I think
Yeah.
yeah, we're talking about some other
But
pieces. I think going back to kind of finish
little sidetrack
little
there on the
sidetrack
gym conversation.
exactly, but to go back to kind of the pitfalls
Yeah.
of what can happen. I'll share like in a very, very abbreviated version of what happened to me in one location was basically we started to have a lot of success and then we realized, wow, there's a lot of people who want us to do fitness. So we started doing some like PT classes slash like fitness stuff and the gym got pissed about it. And
Mhm.
so then it became this like, well, listen, like I'm paying you rent. I have an agreement with you. Like I'm trying to make money to pay you X amount of money. And then we we're paying quite a bit, right? We're paying like, won't go into specifics because obviously you don't know the spaces, but for
Yeah.
not great space, we were paying a ton of money. And so like, for us, we were like, well, listen, we're trying to like make rent. Like, what am I going to say? Like, I can't make rent. And
Yeah.
then essentially what ended up happening is then COVID kind of took out the gym and things transpired where we had to find our own space and we were put in a really tough spot where we very unexpectedly had to jump and basically more than double our rent and
Yeah.
that hurt for a good year. So you want to just be careful that you have an escape valve, particularly as you grow. I would say that if you're going to hire a second physical therapist, you probably don't want to be in a gym. I would say that
Yeah.
if it's you and like a VA or you and a front desk person, anytime you're like, hey, I want to grow another person, I would not grow past one PT. You go to a
Mhm.
second physical therapist and like a second, even a third body. Like I would say, like a front desk person, maybe
Yeah.
if they've got space for it and like they're kind of sharing responsibilities. But the more once you get outside of just you, it really is tough.
Yeah.
It's one of
Well,
those things where you're going to step on toes and you're
well, and
essentially
also
roommates.
just, clinic math is,
Yeah,
the first therapist, the clinic isn't making money, right? But it's once you add that second therapist
yeah,
that you start actually making the money. And then also think about it too. You did a good job of like kind of building your business through the gym. I've had mobile PTs out here tell me, don't expect anything more than, or I think it was they did it and then didn't do well. You told me, I think, don't expect anything more than about 30% of your business to be
yeah,
from the gym. Like, because I came into it saying like, oh, I'm going to get this best, I'm going to make one great deal and then I'm set for life. And you're just like, no, no, like you'll get a small percentage of those people coming in,
yeah,
even if it is, everyone's playing pickleball and they're 50, right? Like you're
Yeah.
still not going to get every single member because they're going to have their own PT or whatever. So still with all of this gym partnering stuff, keep in perspective that you still have to market, you still have to make relationships, you still have to build word of mouth regardless of the gym.
You brought up a great point. I'd say that 30% of your patients will come from wherever you are going, right, in that same facility, because like the gym owner is basically going to feed themselves in that rev split model.
Hmm.
However, what I would say is you gotta. I would use the gym if, like, say I'm going to go to someone's home as a mobile PD. Say I'm in Owen's shoes. I would use the gym only if I'm going to lose the sale because to the point where he's like, his wife's like, I'm not coming to you. But like, well, I do actually have another option if you want to drive to me. That's what some people, and you could back into it like that. Like, oh, well, some people just prefer me coming to them, but if you want, you can just come to the gym. I have this space that does this, right, and it
Yeah.
has X, and they're like, okay, cool, and then you could do that to save. So to save the sale, you could do it, or as you start getting a lot busier, you're like, crap, I really got to like start compressing these together so I can actually manage
Yeah.
this well, right? And if you can do that, then that's a really good way to like grow. And basically, if you're busting at the seams to the point where you now have some revenue where you can start finding spaces, again, like if you're tight on money and you want to figure out how to grow, I would then build out a small space. I just don't see the opportunities working well because of the added cash services that you're going to want to add to physical
Hmm.
therapy practices. Like I think of it from insurance perspective. As soon as I was doing the insurance game, we were making good money. But like as soon as I wanted to add cash practices, all of a sudden the gym was doing all those cash practices too, and
Yeah.
like we became competition. And
The
that's when I'm like,
recovery area of the gym,
exactly,
right? Like how many personal trainers out there now have like all this recovery stuff, which is essentially what
yes.
we've been using as modalities for a lot of things. So yeah, it's I can see how it gets sticky down the road.
Yeah, so
Um,
that's why, and I think it does. I've just noticed it doesn't always end well,
yeah.
unless you have a really great relationship. Like we have with Bobby V Sports Academy, we have a great relationship with these guys, and we do both
Mhm.
the fitness and the physical therapy. We pay quite a bit of money, but it's a great facility, and we do a good job. So like, I think that those are rarer than people would think.
Yeah.
So far, I found it to be, it's great when you start, but but have an out plan. Like have a plan to be
Yeah.
like, how when I grow, where am I going with this?
I bet Bobby V is a funny guy to hang with.
He is. He's a very unique individual. I like him.
I
He's
was
a
gonna
funny
say
guy.
he was a unique manager for the Mets too. All
I
right,
guess
and
I'm not breaking news here.
and okay, so with that we will end. I just again I want to do a quick plug here. This is one of the things Brian was actually creating a new class, really working on referral partners, and this is something that just was top of mind for us. So we thought it would be a great conversation, especially based on my lurking and commenting on all the Facebook and Reddit posts I can find when I'm dying in my car of heat exhaustion. Uh, so if you have not heard already, we do have a school group. School is a great platform for us to be able to provide the physio growth mentorship program. So right now we are starting to do a $12 a month prescription. Yeah, you can see I've been marketing.
Yeah.
Um, $12 per month subscription, and that gets you access to a monthly Q&A and just kind of like a live conversation with all the other group members. The Q&As are going to be recorded live, but obviously if you have a question that doesn't get to, we'll get to that as well. And you just get full access to us about your business, which is great. And then we are also putting together a lot of the stuff that was free. We are going to start looking at that and building out a little bit more of our actual formal mentorship program. So get in there now so you can check out some of that stuff. And yeah, the link's in the show notes. Brian, you got
Yeah.
anything to say before we
I
bounce?
love it. So Owen said it perfectly. Basically, what we're doing with this group is, for $12 a month, you get access to two people who are doing, like seven-figure multi businesses and started it from nothing, right? And so, yeah, we're doing Q&A calls weekly, and we actually have like a where do I start business blueprint that we're giving away. So like what you can do is you can go in the group, you can settle up, and then you can talk with us about it. We can literally help you build your business for $12. I mean, that's a no-brainer. And then we're obviously adding more and more trainings in there that we're trying to add. So that we'll figure out what that looks like. But that's for another day.
Yeah, as you can tell, we love coaching this. I think I did the math the other day, and about 8 of my former directors are now business owners, cash pay business owners,
Nice.
or they run regions. So we love this stuff.
That's good. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So all right, and with that, my friend, we are out. Have a great Thursday.
Thanks, man. You too. See ya.
And if this drops on Friday, have a great Friday too. All right, bye.